Prologue, Fort Collins, Colorado, 1975. I've been writing for several hours, and my hand is cramping. Laying the cheap ballpoint pen aside, I massage my stiff fingers, noting with satisfaction the number of pages I've filled and torn from the yellow Lego pad. Sometimes I think about getting a used typewriter and teaching myself to type, but I never seem to get around to it. There's an intimacy in putting a pen to paper that, I can't imagine duplicating with a typewriter. An intimacy that is an integral part of the creative process for me. Stretching, I realize the room is growing cold, and I note that the window above my makeshift writing desk is fringed with an intricate pattern of frost. In the distance, the snow-capped peaks of the Colorado Rockies jut into the brilliant blue of the winter sky. Belatedly, I realize I've allowed the fire to burn down. So engrossed have I been in my writing. Moving to the stove, I open the door and poke at the coals. Opening the damper creates a draft, coaxing a small flame from the glowing embers. I add some kindling before placing an armload of split pinion in the stove. Having recently received a contract with a modest advance for my first novel, I am now beginning work on my second. Although my advance amounted to hardly more than grocery money, it will allow me to focus on my writing for the next 4 or 5 months without having to hustle odd jobs to keep body and soul together. I sometimes dream of having a best-selling novel, wondering what it'd be like to be free from the financial pressure that has dogged my days for as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, I had to mow lawns and shovel snow to help my mother make ends meet. Living on the ragged edge of poverty was bad enough, but growing up without a father was what left me wounded in ways I still can't talk about. I've made peace with my poverty. At least I think I have. Being divorced, I have only myself to think about, and my needs are few. Don't misunderstand me. I like to get paid for my writing, but what fulfills me is the work, not the pay. I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't looking forward to seeing my book in print. Still, I can't imagine that holding the first copy will be nearly as rewarding as the satisfaction I get from the writing itself. It's not easy, and I'm sometimes ready to pull my hair out, especially when I get bogged down and can't seem to figure a way out. Still, all things considered, this is who I am, a writer. Glancing up, I see the rural mail carrier stopping at the end of my driveway. Even from this distance, I can see his warm breath fog the frigid January air as he lowers the window of his Jeep to deposit a fistful of mail in the sagging mailbox. I'm sure it's mostly junk. Still, I reach for my parka and head for the door. The cold slaps me in the face and my eyes smart. An Arctic cold front has plunged temperatures to 17 degrees below, and the snow beneath my boots is nearly as hard as gravel. Unconsciously, I find myself comparing the bitter cold to the sweltering heat of the Amazon basin. As I do, I'm assailed with the host of bittersweet memories. It's been more than 4 years since Helen, Carol, and I launched our small boat, made our way down the Rio Moa toward Cruzeiro do Sul on the first leg of our journey back to civilization. Still, the memories have the power to transfix me. Determinedly, I push them to the back of my mind as I open my dilapidated mailbox and retrieve my mail. A quick perusal of the contents confirms my suspicions. It's mostly junk, and I turn toward the house, eagerly anticipating the warmth of the stove. In the tiny mudroom, I stomp the snow off my boots and hang my parka on a wooden peg by the door. Tossing the mail on the counter, I stretch my hands toward the stove, savoring its warmth. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice the edge of a tissue-thin, powder blue aerogram envelope. I don't know how I missed it when I glanced through the mail before tossing it on the counter, but I did. Now it draws me like a magnet. Could it be that Diana has written me after all this time? It's not likely, given the way we parted. But still I hope. I'm sure my optimism is ill-founded. I haven't heard a word from her since I left the mission station, yet not a day passes that I do not think of her. I remember the way she looked the first time I saw her. How beautiful she was, sitting in the swing beneath the towering Sonoma tree. Her eyes were the color of the Colorado sky, and her face was full of laughter, the afternoon sun highlighting her honey-colored hair. How gentle was her touch as she cared for me while I was recovering from malaria. The love we shared, brief as it was, still lives in my heart. Unconsciously, I rub my chest where an all too familiar ache has taken up residence. From my makeshift desk, I collect a sheaf of yellow pages and return to the warmth of the stove, determined to ignore the aerogram envelope and the memories it has invoked. Dutifully, I scan the handwritten pages, noticing the cramped script. According to Diana, my handwriting matches my personality. She said I was hard to read. I don't like to think of myself as being closed, but I suppose she's right. It's not that I don't trust people. I just don't want to be hurt again. With an effort, I turn my thoughts to my day's work, but the things I've written on the yellow pages are no match for the memories now playing on the screen of my mind. Diana is sitting in a wooden rocker with her injured leg propped on a makeshift footstool, a kerosene lamp on a wooden crate at her elbow. I'm sitting on the floor beside her, and she is running her fingers through my hair. The only sound is the pinging of a gentle rain on the corrugated tin roof of the mission house. I am profoundly contented in a way I've never known. Pain, which has been so much a part of my life, mostly gone. And what remains lurks unacknowledged on the edges of my mind. It will return, of that I am sure, but for now I push that thought from my mind and focus on the moment. As always, that poignant memory morphs into darker ones, from which I extract little pleasure but no little pain. I've replayed the same scenes so often that they have cut deep grooves in my memory, like those on an extended play album. My self-recriminations are without end. Did I do the right thing? Was I really thinking of Diana, or was I just being selfish? I try to imagine how things might have played out had I chosen differently, but I cannot picture a happy ending. Although I've made a semblance of peace with my past, at least as far as it concerned my relationship with my departed father, I was still a wounded soul with a long history of destroying those I loved. No matter how much it might pain me, I was determined to spare Diana that fate. During those final days in the Amazon, we discussed every possible scenario, left no option unexplored. Late into the night, we planned and schemed and argued. But when all was said and done, we could not find a course of action suitable to both of us. Diana could not marry me and continue to serve as a missionary. Her denomination had a prohibition against ministers or missionaries marrying a divorced person. If she were to marry me, the Foreign Missions Department would rescind her appointment and her denomination would defrock her. No matter how much we loved each other, I could never permit her to suffer such a loss or the inevitable public humiliation that would accompany it. She offered to resign her appointment, seek reappointment with another missionary board with less stringent requirements regarding divorce and remarriage. It seemed like a workable solution at first blush, but the more we talked about it, the less feasible it became. Diana would have had to resign her appointment, leave the Amazon to return to the States to seek reappointment without any guarantees. If she received an appointment with the new missionary board, she'd have to spend months, maybe as long as 2 years, raising her support. No small task, given she would have had few, if any, contacts within the new missionary organization. Even if she were successful, I could not imagine myself living as a missionary in the Amazon or, well, any other God-forsaken place, no matter how much I loved her. When I told her I'd never consider living on the mission field under any circumstances, something seemed to die inside of her. Although I felt like a selfish jerk, I knew myself well enough to know that I didn't dare commit to something I could never live up to. I'd already done that once. I was still living with the consequences. Taking both of her hands in mine, I told her I loved her too much to lie to her or to myself. To do so, I explained, would be unspeakably cruel. I couldn't do that to her, not even to spare her this present pain. For another 2 or 3 days, she seemed to withdraw inside herself, and I set about making preparations for my trip downriver. She found me late one afternoon as Lakeo and I were putting the last of my things into his boat in preparation for leaving early the next morning. As she approached, Lakeo slipped away. I could tell she'd been crying, but there was a stubborn determination in her eyes when she looked at me. She told me that since I had no intention of living on the mission field, she would give up her missionary work, marry me, and practice medicine in the United States. I'm not sure how she expected me to react, but I surely disappointed her. Instead of taking her in my arms and crushing her to my chest, I turned and walked to the river's edge. Of course, her offer caused me no little conflict. I loved her more than I ever imagined possible, and the thought of returning with her to the States made me dizzy with the possibilities. We could relocate in a small town high in the Rockies where she could practice medicine and I could follow my secret dreams of becoming a writer. Just what I had dreamed of. Unfortunately, that's all it was. Just a dream. I knew myself well enough to know my pride would never allow me to be a kept man, not even until I established myself as a published author. On another level, it made me feel like a jerk. She was willing to give up her calling, her life's dream for me. And yet I wasn't even willing to swallow my pride and accept her offer. What could be more selfish than that? Slipping behind me, she wrapped her arms around my waist and laid her cheek against my back between my shoulders. I loved her so much. More than anything, I wanted to take her in my arms and cover her face with kisses. But I knew I didn't dare. If I allowed my resolve to waver even the least bit, I would be lost. Her Her willingness to sacrifice herself on the altar of our love was heartrending in its selflessness, but it would never work. It was a price neither of us could afford to pay. At least I was wise enough to know that. God had first claim on her life. And whether she realized it or not, turning her back on her calling would kill something vital inside of her. In time, she would come to resent me, to blame me for the loss of her life's purpose. And then her love for me would die. It was better, I reasoned, to suffer clean break, painful though it might be, than to slowly destroy each other, as inevitably we must. Removing her arms from around my waist, I turned toward the trail that led to the mission compound and the small house that had been my home these past weeks. I heard Diana sobbing, but I did not look back. She might have called my name. There might have been a voice inside my head. I will never know, for I did not turn around to see. There was only a hint of daylight touching the eastern sky the next morning when Lako and I made our way toward the river for the long journey back. I was torn up on the inside. The people I loved were here, Diana and Yuriko, but I knew I couldn't stay. I refused to sacrifice their happiness in hopes of securing my own. No matter how much I wanted us to be together, I knew it would never work. As Lako turned the boat downriver, I choked back a sob and steeled myself for what lay ahead. I hadn't allowed myself to relive those painful memories for several weeks, and with good reason. Each time I went there, I found myself battling depression, sometimes for days. What little joy the memories afforded me was far outweighed by the depression that followed. Deliberately, I pushed the memories to the back of my mind and focused on the present. Outside the small window above my writing desk, the day was dying, winter's night coming with a rush. Placing the yellow sheets containing my day's writing on the makeshift desk, I turned toward the counter, picked up the tissue-thin, light blue aerogram envelope. The postage stamp was Brazilian, and with trembling hands I carefully opened it, hoping against hope that Diana had finally written to me after all this time.